Let's say for a moment that all of us, we're the disciples waking up in Jericho. We've got knots in our stomachs. We didn't sleep well. All of us were bedded down last night on the same rough pallet, and the disciple on our right was snoring and turned over every 20 minutes all night long. We're tired. And yet we all know the same thing, that Jerusalem is just 15 miles down the road, and unless we are waylaid, we'll be there by dark tonight. We're not sure what will happen there, but from what Jesus has told us, it sounds grim. Not that we understand half of what he says. It's harder than we thought, this disciples' business. When he first asked us to follow him, we thought he was headed for success, for high political office, and then for the very throne of Israel. But lately he's been talking crazy, talking about dying and rising and being a servant. It's not what we expected. We've thought more than once about calling it quits and going back home, but we love him. And the way he seems to love everyone he meets, never seeing just crowds, but always seeing people, each one of them, and the way he reaches out to them, to touch them, heal them, make them whole. And sure enough, on our way out of town, he's at it again. With half the town tagging along behind us, we catch sight of a blind beggar by the side of the road, rocking back and forth on his heels. Someone in the crowd groans out, "It's Bartimaeus again." So we figure he's pretty well known, at least by the ones who are throwing alms his way. All of a sudden, he jerks his head up and shouts, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And that stops us dead in our tracks, because it's the first time we've heard anyone except us or a demon call him by his title, Son of David. How does a blind beggar see what no one else can see? That the man on the road in front of him is the Messiah. "Be quiet, beggar," someone hisses at him. "Don't try hustling a rabbi for change. Somebody tell him to shut up." "Son of David," he cries again, "have mercy on me." Jesus hears him this time and stops. "Call him," Jesus says. And the crowd changes its mind about Bartimaeus. They don't scold him. They congratulate him instead and encourage him to his feet. "Take heart. Get up, Bartimaeus. He's calling you. Today's your lucky day." He flings off his coat and springs to his feet, rushing toward the sound of Jesus' voice. But he misjudges it a little, and someone takes him by the shoulders, turning him a bit until he's facing Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asks. At first, we think Jesus is playing to the crowd, but then we realize he just wants to hear Bartimaeus say it. Say exactly what he wants. Say exactly how much he believes Jesus can do. So the blind man sums up his heart's desire in 6 words. "My teacher, let me see again." And Jesus replies, "Go. Your faith has made you well." Just like that. Just words. No mud, no spittle, not even a touch on the shoulder. Bartimaeus closes his eyes, and when he opens them again, they work. "Go," Jesus tells him. But he doesn't go, or else he decides right there on the spot that his way is Jesus' way, because that is the way he chooses without any way of knowing where it will lead. Still blinking, he chooses the road to Jerusalem. Now that's a splendid story, isn't it? One in which there's no ambivalence. All the verbs are strong and clean. Bartimaeus cries out, springs up, and speaks straight from his heart. His faith is impeccable, and as soon as Jesus says so out loud, Bartimaeus' eyes are opened and he becomes a disciple, following Jesus on his way as if there's no other way once he can really see. Perfect story, full of courage and compassion, complete with a happy ending. That's what we want, isn't it? To trade in whatever blindness each of us has got so that we can see ourselves, see our world, see Christ clearly without cloud or shadow. That's what we want, isn't it? It's a metaphorical question, of course, a really good one too. But real blindness is something else. Most of us can't imagine what it would be like to live in darkness, or, having learned to do that, what it would be like to suddenly see, to have to make sense out of color, depth, distance, perspective, and all those other things we figured out years ago and now take for granted. But what if we didn't? What if we had never learned from experience that the boat looks small because it's far out there in the water? What if we believed we could reach out and take it in our hands, that boat as tiny as it looks? What would it be like to reach out to that exact spot on the horizon right in front of us, expecting to touch a toy boat, but to close our hands on air, just air, with that tiny boat still bobbing there before our eyes, tantalizing us but becoming insubstantial every time our fingers curl around the place it seems to be. In her book, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, Annie Dillard quotes at length from a book called Space and Sight by Marius von Senden. It's about the first people in the world to undergo successful cataract surgery. All blind from birth, they suddenly received their sight and then were interviewed about what they saw. Their stories are strange and moving. They describe a world we no longer see, describe it the way a newborn or an alien might describe it upon seeing it for the first time. One newly sighted girl was shown a batch of photographs and then some paintings by her mother. "Why do they put those dark marks all over them?" the girl asked. "Those aren't dark marks," her mother explained. "They're shadows." "Shadows?" the girl asked. Her mother said, "Yes, that is one of the ways the eye knows that things have shape," her mother said. "If it weren't for shadows, many things would look flat." "Well, that's how things do look," her daughter answered. "Everything looks flat with dark patches." A second girl was so stunned by the radiance of the world that she kept her eyes shut for 2 weeks. When she finally opened them, she saw only a field of light against which everything seemed to be in motion. She couldn't distinguish objects, but gazed at everything around her, saying over and over again, "Oh God, how beautiful." But not everything was beautiful for these patients. Unable to judge distances, they reached out for things a mile away, or cracked their shins on pieces of furniture they perceived as only patches of color. The world turned out to be much bigger than they had thought, bigger and infinitely more complex. Unable to control it, many of them fell into depression. Others, having seen themselves for the first time in a mirror, realized how often others had seen them without their awareness or their assent. Some became terribly self-conscious about their appearance, while others soon refused to go out at all. The distressed father of one young woman wrote her surgeon that his daughter had taken to shutting her eyes when she walked around the house, and that she never seemed happier than when she pretended to be blind again. A 15-year-old boy finally demanded to be taken back to the local home for the blind, where he had left his girlfriend behind. No, really, I can't stand it anymore. If things aren't altered, I'll tear my eyes out. Tear your eyes out? After being rescued from a life in the dark? After being hauled into the light and presented with a world full of color, depth, movement, space, and sights? Tear your eyes out? For God's sake, why? It's just too much. Too much for what? Too much to see, do, be. It was better before. Better? How? Smaller, quieter, safer. But this is what you were made for. You were meant to see. I would rather not. Besides, the sun hurts my eyes. If you will excuse me, I think I will go lie down now. Lie down? Take heart. Get up. He is calling you. What will we do? How will we have it? To see or not to see? We can stay where we are. We can sit in the familiar dark, where all the edges are rounded off so that we won't hurt ourselves, where we only need concern ourselves with what is just within our reach. After all, it probably won't work out anyway. No sense getting our hopes up. No sense thinking of ourselves as people who might see and make a change. Make a change for others, for ourselves. Better stay with what we know. Go. Your faith has made you well. This year, 2020, did you ever imagine a year like this? All the things we've seen. COVID-19, our government in chaos with a president who doesn't seem to care that thousands and thousands of people are dying, and that millions upon millions of people are out of work. A virtual public execution of an African-American man named George Floyd that lasted 8 minutes and 46 excruciating seconds. Millions of people in America and around the world marching and protesting and clamoring for justice, respect, and equality. Our own military shooting tear gas and rubber bullets at some of those protesters. Police knocking down a 75-year-old man who wasn't a threat. causing him brain injury. Millions of people who refuse to listen to the medical experts and scientists, not wearing masks, not practicing social distancing. It's enough to make me want to curl up in the sofa or my bed, pull the covers over my head, and wait until things are all back to normal. The anxiety, fear, anger, and dread are mind-numbing. I just want to close my eyes and wait until it's all over. Wait until I can see things the way they were. But then I see laws. I see laws being changed to start making police more responsible in their use of force. I see Confederate monuments and flags being banned and taken down in efforts to end the glorifying and romanticizing of people who were traitors to their country and to their democracy in their desire to maintain the abomination of slavery. I see the owner and employees of a pizza parlor in Chicago realizing right now that they can't stay in business just by making pizza. So they've added a process for making protective shields in their ovens and distributing them to local medical centers to help out our healthcare professionals on the front line of the virus. I see animals I've never seen out and about near my home. Ducks, beavers, owls, because there's less noise, there's less human intrusion, there's less pollution in their midst. I guess the question is, are we willing to see or not? And if we're willing, then are we willing to see everything there is? The good along with the awful, the lovely along with the monstrous. And are we willing to see all of those things in ourselves, in those we meet, and in the world? Are we willing to bruise our shins, to learn our way around the obstacles and the mysteries and the newness of it all? Are we willing to bruise our hearts and also do everything we can to discover new ways to make them heal? We can go our way, seeing as if for the first time, or having gained our sight, if the way doesn't look so appealing anymore, then we can try another way. We can try the way to Jerusalem. It leads through a garden, past a cross, to an empty tomb. It's not always scenic. There'll be some good things and some terrible things along the way. But it's something that, if we're willing to see all of it, go all the way, something that will change our lives forever, in this moment and always. We've been invited, my friends. Take heart. Get up. He is calling us. We've been invited, my friends. Take heart. Get up. He is calling us. Thanks be to God. Amen.